Hi, I'm Keely from Bound Bindery, and today I'm going to show you how to make your own book cloth out of any fabric. So book cloth is a specially designed fabric that's used in bookbinding to cover and protect the outside of the book, and it's usually made from a cotton or linen and then starched and coated to provide that durability. In this video, I'll be using a 100% cotton fabric, some heat and bond light, and tissue paper. And I love doing this method because you have so many options for colours and materials, and because you can use whatever fabric you want. It's also more cost effective, as where I'm from in Australia, we only have online options and shipping can be a huge expense. As always, this will be in real time, so grab a cup of tea and prepare yourself to watch 10 minutes of me ironing. We start out by ironing the fabric because it's really important it doesn't have any creases in it. If you do leave any creases, these get ironed into that heat and bond and you can't iron them out later. So really take your time here, making sure the fabric is as smooth as possible. I honestly just crank the temperature right up and it seems to do the trick. Once your fabric is sufficiently ironed, you're going to take your heat and bond light and cut it to size. You want this to be roughly the size you want your book cloth to be in the end. And you'll also notice that there is a smooth and a rough side to the heat and bond. So once you have it all cut, you need to lay the heat and bond with the rough side facing down. These are the little bits of glue that we need to evenly apply the heat to until it's all melted and adhered to the fabric. I'm switching from my iron to my heat press because it's really important you don't use steam on this, and I just use the middle heat setting. I've also added a blanket to my ironing board as additional layers because sometimes the pattern from the frame will show through on the heat and bond. It also does need to be a firm surface though, so if you use towels or a carpeted floor, it doesn't provide quite enough support for it. With this, while I'm using my heat press, you can use an iron. You just need to make sure there's no steam, so it's not in a steam setting, and you'll want to bring the heat right down. It's super important that you get the purple or light version of the heat and bond. There is also a red or original one, but if you plan on using heat transfer vinyl on your book cover later on down the track, it does heat up the glue and it starts to seep through your material. I haven't had that problem at all once I switched to the purple one, and outside of that they seem to work exactly the same. If I can figure it out, I'll show some footage of what it looks like when the glue starts to seep through the material. Unfortunately, once this has happened, there's no going back. You have to be pretty patient with this, which is why anyone who makes their own book cloth calls it a labor of love. You need to make sure that the glue has melted evenly. So I'm just going over every part of the heat and bond, making sure the heat has had time to melt the glue. I'm focusing extra on the corners and edges. I'm also not using too much pressure, and I'm going nice and slow while I do this. going over any spots that look like they may not have adhered as well, but once you're happy with it, you just need to leave it until it's completely cool. This is roughly 10 minutes later, and now we need to peel the paper backing off. If you've done everything right so far, this should be pretty easy. You can see there those strange markings on the fabric. This is what I mentioned earlier about the pattern from my ironing board showing through. This shouldn't show up on the other side, but if it was any more pronounced, it might have, so just keep an eye on that when you're doing yours. Next, we need to seal this with tissue paper. I bought this bulk pack ages ago, but any tissue paper will do. I'm just going to cut it roughly to the size of the heat and bond, and we can trim any excess off later. I'm still using the middle heat option here, but because this is so thin, you just want to make sure that you're going over it really lightly and only until the glue has fully melted. You don't want to press firmly or keep it in one spot longer than necessary. We're just going to repeat this process and do this until the tissue paper has fully adhered to the fabric. This is the part where you'll notice if there were any creases that you didn't get out in the first step of making this. The last step is to trim off the excess fabric, and then all you're left with is your book cloth. You can use a fabric cutter or a rotary blade to do this, but I find that sharp scissors work just fine. I will trim this again when I'm actually gluing it to my hardcover, so I'm not concerned if it's not perfect at this stage. you have it, your finished book cloth. You can see it has more structure than the plain fabric by itself, and this will provide more protection for your hardcover books. I love that this can be used with any fabric. There are so many fun options for colours, designs and materials. I actually used this book cloth on a recent rebind of The Will of the Many. If you want to see how I use this material to actually make a hardcover for a book, you can check out that video. As always, thanks for watching and follow along for more videos to bind to.